The boss, too, by the way.
Yeah.
That's a hot story. A lot of people talk about Dan Snyder. His lawsuit against City Paper. We're going to delve into it in depth right now. But I want to mention as well, Dan Snyder was invited to come on this program. Of course, I talked to him down in Dallas. We'll see a snippet of that a little later in the show. He declined through his PR man, Tony Wiley. Also, Tony Wiley, who you've heard on the radio, perhaps. He was invited to come on. Any other Redskins, they declined. As usual, Dan Snyder always welcome on this program, and any of his employees as well. But let's talk about this issue right now with a couple experts. John Maroon, Maroon PR, Columbia. He represents some Cal Ripken, some other guys that briefly worked for the Redskins, or you did briefly for Snyder about a decade ago.
Yep, 1999 season. First year Dan owned the team, I was the VP of Communications.
Got a connection there. And our friend Joe DeGenova, former U.S. attorney for the Washington, D.C. Man, how you been?
Just been great. Good. Nice to be back.
Governor Reeves gets in trouble, you come on the show. Dan Snyder sues somebody, you come on the show.
It's just wonderful. There's sunshine everywhere.
Let me start from you from a legal background, because I think a lot of sports fans have talked about this. I've heard opinions about this. A legal background. You've looked at this lawsuit,
yes,
and you've seen where he a claim of libel. Break that down for me. What libel is, and does this match up?
Well, libel is saying something about somebody that defames them, brings them into a bad light, accuses them of a crime, or does something bad. And you have the right to sue for that if you're an ordinary citizen. If you're a public figure like Dan Snyder, or you're a public official, or someone who has been written about a lot because of your job and the nature of it, you have a much higher standard before you can sue. You have to be able to prove malice. That means a bad faith attempt by the publication to lie about you or make things up.
And part of that, we would hear related to his business practices, the line that caught Dan Snyder's attention, and I asked him about this when I was in Dallas last week, that's the Dan Snyder who got caught forging names as a telemarketer with Snyder Communications. Snyder said that is not an accurate depiction of that, and that would be, I guess, where he feels, hey, you're slandering me here.
Sure, and he'll have an opportunity to prove that it's not true, because once you file a lawsuit like he did, you may think you have a right, but something else happens. It's going to be very, very difficult for him and his organization and his family. Something called discovery. When you file a lawsuit, the other side, that is the defendants, the company that owns the newspaper that he sued, has a right to depose him, to take his testimony under oath, his wife, all of his employees, to get his financial records. And if this is going to be very, very difficult for him, because suing somebody is easy. Mm-hmm. The tough part is what happens after that. It's called discovery and the taking of depositions. That's pretty ugly. It's pretty time-consuming. I know the cost doesn't matter to him, but it may matter to other people in his life.
And it is interesting to point out that, and Dan Snyder said this to me, look, as much as people might think he's antagonistic to the media, he's never sued anyone in the media before. So this kind of a precedent being set here. Now, you as a PR guy, I know, like, in his legal field, the people were talking about this. In the PR field, I know a lot of people are talking about this. I mentioned Tony Wiley, his PR guy. What was your initial thought when you saw this and when you read about it?
Well, look, the initial thought is this. It's tough being a public figure. And if that story's written about any of us, we'd be angry. We'd be upset. We wouldn't like it. But when you're a public figure and you're the owner of a public trust in the most popular sports league in the world, you have to take a step back, and you have to have a little bit thicker skin, because it comes with the territory. And all this really did was give a platform to a news gathering agency, with all due respect to Washington City Paper, that had a relatively small circulation, and now it is a national story.
Yeah, to that point, when this was originally written, the comment section was about maybe this deep. Good 400 or 500 comments. Now there's 1,000. So the more attention came to this story recently than before. I asked Dan Snyder about that, and Tony Wiley, and he said, hey, it doesn't matter. If it's right, it's right. And the other issue he had, with regard to his wife, Tanya Snyder. Of course, we know about her story, battling breast cancer. She's been out front raising money for those causes. There was an early quote in the story. His wife, Tanya Snyder, is out selling the Transformation 2. Last week, she went on local TV to tell an interview that he's now surrounded by, quote, better people, and he's, quote, grown and evolved. The feeling there that this was excerpted out of an interview she did about breast cancer, but not necessarily in this context. I can see being sensitive to that. It's his wife.
Well, I'm sure that part of the reason that Mr. Snyder wanted to do this was that I'm sure his wife who is a semi-public figure, not the same, obviously, as Dan Snyder, was very upset by the article and probably urged him to do this. The problem you have, though, as a lawyer, and when somebody gets upset, is you sit them down and you say to them, look, you can sue, but it better be a well-based lawsuit because you are a public figure, and you better make it stick if you're going to do it. But it's also, remember this, it changes your life because lawsuits take over your life. They become sometimes some of the most important things in your life. They take a lot of your time, a lot of your human energy. And you have to decide you want to do that. Now, Mr. Snyder may feel that because he is so rich and so wealthy and so powerful that he's going to be insulated from all the bad effects of this. That's not true. He's like any other plaintiff at this point. It doesn't matter if he's a billionaire or a pauper. He's going to be deposed. If he continues this lawsuit, a group of lawyers are going to sit him down and are going to question him for not an hour, not a day, not 2 days, until they're done. About everything in his life, about Six Flags, about the company that they allegedly forged documents, every single part of his life, the money, the finances, the team, rumors about other things that have gone on in his life and in the organization, none of that is out of bounds.
And what I should mention is, and Dan Snyder has said, look, I will withdraw this. I just want an apology. And then they said that they did not want the writer Dave McKenna, who's been at this Washington City paper for a long time. He's been on the program before as well. That they didn't necessarily want his job. It appeared to be that way. I don't know what other pressure would be there. But have you had a client come to you and talk about a lawsuit from the PR standpoint? What is this going to do to me in the public eye?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll tell you what, going back to this, again, all of us had been exposed to these sorts of stories, and all of us have said, let's sue him. Where do we draw the line? And we've been upset, but then you got to deep.
I want to sue my producer every day.
I heard that for sure.
Trying to make me look bad.
But you got to take a step back, and yes, you do that, but you need to take a step back. You need to think about all the things that Joe just said and what it's gonna mean. And the end of the day, it's hard being a public figure, and nothing positive is going to come out of this, nothing, and except elevating the paper that had a small circulation to a national level, like we said earlier. The other tack that you could have done was, okay, this came out, we're upset, we think there's a lot of factual errors in here. Let's go over to City Paper.
Yeah.
Let's sit down with their editorial board and say, look, this is over the line, don't you think? And my guess is maybe City Paper would have said, you know what, we went a little too far this time. Build those relationships. We are in a relationship business. Public relations, the NFL, relationship business. Build those bridges, build those relationships, and you will end up getting more of a benefit of the doubt than this story should.
And they said, the Washington City paper said they provided Snyder an opportunity to say, write a reply column or point out what was false, and they would remove if they thought it was false. I guess they disagree on what's false. The other issue was the picture itself, the horns, which Dan Snyder, his representative, said possibly anti-Semitic, and there's a quote from a rabbi who said that. Now this is a touchy subject because I'm not Jewish, so I'm not in the business of telling other people what they can be offended by. I do know, I've talked to some friends who are Jewish, and there is a difference of view here. Some people think, yeah, it is a depiction that historically has been used, and virulently, to quote his lawyer, blatantly anti-Semitic. Others saying, no, it's just, they're calling you devil.
Well, if it were, even if it were, it's not libelous, and it is not a grounds for a cause of action. Look, Dan Snyder has a PR problem. Before this lawsuit was ever filed, and before the City Paper article, he's got a PR problem. He's got a losing football team. He has a bad image as an owner. And so what do you do when you're in that situation? In my opinion, you don't file a lawsuit against a media operation that's a small-time operation. It's just, to me, it's bad all the way across the board.
Washington City Paper has set up a fund of $18,000. It's sort of symbolic, but people are chipping in. They're trying to. A lot of fans upset about this, or people. We'll see how
the question is, can you picture the Rooneys doing this?
I don't know.
No.